Former Badgers great James White is getting into coaching, but it's not at Wisconsin. Why I think it's okay and why it's not a huge deal for Wisconsin Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Really do appreciate you tuning in on a Friday here. Thank you for jumping on the show. Today's episode, we are talking about James White going to Illinois to coach. Big recruiting visits coming up on the football side, plus a Penn State basketball preview. A ton of stuff to get into today on Locked On Badgers. Once again, though, really do appreciate every single person for tuning in, whether you're an everyday or whether you're catching the car, whether you're going to watch it later, listen to it later, whatever it is. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $150 or get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Okay, let's talk about James White really quick, because this is something I had several people kind of ping me on, either DM. We talked about it in our Discord. I know Scary Alvarez did a podcast on this. I always encourage you to go check out his work. People were really frustrated. James White, former Badger great running back, getting into coaching, being hired at Illinois, going to work with Brett Bielema. Obviously, Badger fans very familiar with Brett Bielema. And there was a lot of frustration initially. Like, why is he not coming to coach at Wisconsin? You know, frustration from fans and some former players who went to Twitter and said, what are we doing? You have culture guys in James White who have achieved at the highest level, of won a Super Bowl, who are great Badgers, who have come back to Madison. And this team is in need of culture. Why are we not bringing these guys in to coach? I would say I'm okay with this. And let me start with a couple things. First of all, I love James White. Let's start there. That's one of my all-time favorite Badgers. I remember the Ohio State game like it was yesterday. I remember the students holding up the white sheets of paper. Consummate pro, incredible Badger. I have no doubt he's going to be successful wherever he goes, as long as that's what he wants to do. So this is no shade on James White when I say, like, I think for all parties, it's best if the Badgers don't bring in for a bunch of former players to coach right now, even if they'd wanted to, right? That's the other part of it. Where does he want to coach? He has a relationship with Brett Bielema. That it just might be a simpler, easier, better spot for him to coach at Illinois than Wisconsin, because that's the relationship he has with that head coach, you know, who was the head coach when he was at Wisconsin. So I think there's an element to that. But primarily, why I push back a little bit when a lot of Badger fans discuss we need to bring in players to coach. We need to have these players in our coaching staff. They're former Badgers. They know how to win here. It's because this isn't that version of the Badgers anymore. And you have to move the page a little bit. I don't know how else to say that other than this locker room. There's been some issues with players connected to the former program, the former coaches, and the new coaches, right? You have to be unified going forward. And I just don't know if bringing in players who were at Wisconsin when Wisconsin did things under a different regime in a different way, bringing them into the locker room makes the best sense from a culture standpoint. I don't think James White would be anything other than all in if he came here. That's not what I'm saying. But players have been pretty vocal on Twitter, former players, about how they're frustrated with where this program's been. We need to get back to some Wisconsin roots. And then if you bring some of those players back into the locker room to coach, if it starts going sideways, the players start looking at them a certain way and saying, yeah, it was better when you're here doing it that way. I don't think it makes a ton of sense to bring in former players when right now this locker room really needs to come together and move forward in this new direction. And listen, I think Devin Spalding's a good coach. That's the other part of it. I think you don't have Darian Dupree and Dylan Jones still on this roster if they haven't bought into Devin Spalding. So I don't know if there's an opening there anyway, but primarily I think if you're bringing in former players, especially high pedigree former players, you got to be careful in the locker room, where I hope this team has finally kind of come together and unified a little bit going forward. And you just don't want any divisions in that locker room. AJ says, bring back JJ and Melvin Gordon. Hooger says it would be a culture clash with old and new, which can be a killer at a critical time like we are at this program. I agree with you, Ryan. Yeah, listen, I think there's a balance. I do think there is, and this is Hooger saying exactly what I'm trying to say. I think you're clashing a little bit with the old and the new. And whether or not this works, time is going to tell ultimately whether this Fickell coaching regime, experiment, hiring, whether the Fickell era works. Time is going to tell. But right now, you have to be all in on that era. You have to be all in, all parts moving forward, all parts synchronized. And Luke Fickell's not a Wisconsin guy. He's not a Wisconsin guy. Obviously, Ohio State, Cincinnati guy. So he doesn't have those loyalties to those former players. And I just don't think it makes sense, especially at a spot like an assistant running back spot where I don't know if you need that spot filled anyway to potentially bring someone in that, players could look at the old and the new with. Griffin Klein says bringing in a first-time coach can be a big risk reward for our program. While we don't need to take any risks at this point, just need to win. This is the other point I'm going to get to, and Griffin, I think, nailed it. I think if Wisconsin was winning, I don't think anybody would really care. This is because Wisconsin fans are frustrated, and rightfully so. Like if last year was an 8-win year with that schedule, you beat Iowa, you beat Minnesota. I don't think anybody cares. People are frustrated because it feels like we've lost our way, and they look to the players that performed well here to help find our way back. And I just don't think that's the solution. I'll also point this out, and the fact is we just don't know. A lot of former players end up not being great coaches. You don't know. This isn't like a player who has a tremendous track record coaching. Again, I think James White's going to be great wherever he goes. I think he's going to be totally good, but we don't know. The last thing I'll say, this team is not an assistant running backs coach away from anything, okay? You could have hired James White 2 years ago, and this team wouldn't be in any different spot than it is right now. This team has bigger problems than the assistant running back spot. So while I understand the angst, I understand some of the frustration, I also understand that there is value in bringing back Wisconsin guys that understand this state, this program, that have won at a high level. I think fans would like that. I don't think it's solving the issues that Wisconsin has right now. So they just need to win. And then I don't think any of this is a huge deal. Okay, let's get some comments in here. DJ wants Melvin Gordon coming back. Again, I don't know, would Melvin Gordon be a good coach? These are the things that I always kind of wonder when fans want players to come back. Jerry Rice was my all-time favorite football player, probably my all-time favorite athlete. The dude couldn't coach. You would not want him being a coach because he just expects everyone to play at his level. Melvin Gordon was incredible. I don't know if he'd be an incredible coach. I don't know. Maybe he'd be a really good recruiter. Obviously his name and his face would get into a lot of doors, but right now recruiting's more NIL anyway. So I don't know. Yeah, Bo, being a great player doesn't make you a great coach. See MJ as an example. Yeah, and I just listed Jerry Rice. MJ's another example. You just need good coaches, period. Ultimately, at the highest level, you just need good coaches. Oh, somebody's calling me. I apologize. That's Rajiv actually calling me. I should just put him on speakerphone. You just need good coaches, and you just need to win. And then none of this other stuff matters, right? And that's what needs to happen. And again, I'm happy for James White. I don't think it's a big deal that Wisconsin, and maybe he wasn't interested, but for whatever reason, I don't think it's a big deal that he's at Illinois. I don't think that's worth the angst that some people had over this. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, talk about some big-time junior visits coming up, some really interesting prospects, including a new quarterback that I think he might be my favorite quarterback in the class after watching some film on him. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel's incredible. We talk about it a lot. FanDuel is the number one spot. NBA action's going on right now. Obviously, MLB is going to be getting fired up. College basketball, March Madness. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's number one sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. You don't got to disengage. You can keep that sucker in gear. Right now, we're at FanDuel. Bet like you never miss your chance. The app is easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. New FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's jump back into this. Anybody in the comments, let me know if you think the Badgers really messed up here. If they really should have thrown if James White was interested in coaching, which clearly he is because he's taking a spot at Illinois, should the Badgers have gotten involved? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they should have. Maybe that would have helped from a culture standpoint, from a legitimizing this coaching staff standpoint. Again, I don't think so. But let me know if you think I'm wrong on that. Dennis Reynolds says Spalding is a fine running backs coach. Aaron says Rod Carew once said, Hall of Fame baseball player. He was a bad coach because he didn't understand why people couldn't do what he did naturally. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. Okay, let's talk some big junior day visitors coming up. This is not going to be a comprehensive list, but I definitely want to hit on a couple guys that I'm interested in. King Liggins coming up. We talked about him before on the show. King Liggins is a 6'3", 270-pound defensive lineman coming out of Chicago, Illinois, Batavia. 3-star, good offer list. He's been to campus a couple times. What do we like about King Liggins? First of all, great name. 270, compact body, really good burst off the ball, plays with great leverage, physical hands. He continues to work down the line of scrimmage. This would be a really big get for the defensive line as they continue to, revamp that front seven. I think the last couple cycles they've done pretty good there. This is the type of interior plugger who can also be disruptive, right? He splits double teams, really violent hands, good swim move, good extension, fights off blocks, probably like a 3-gap type of guy. Would fit perfectly across the 3-3-5, kind of playing that outside edge. But you could also put him in a 4-2-5 and put him on the inside where maybe on pass rushing situations, King Liggins is a guy who can get in there and be a little disruptive inside the pocket. I like him a lot. I've talked about him before. I think the Badgers are in a solid spot. They've got him on campus multiple times. King Liggins coming back, also has an official coming up. That's definitely a player you want to track. Pat Lambert's done a good job there. The Badgers have been all over him for a long, long time. That's one of the long targets of this 2026 class is King Liggins. Again, pretty local too. If you're the Badgers, if you're the Badgers, you have to win some of those battles in Illinois. You have to be able to go into Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and get some players in the interior like this. So he's coming. I like him a lot. Gavin Meier, in-state offensive lineman. One of the better. It's not a great in-state class. Meier's a good one. 6'8", 6'7", 295 pounds, already ready-made size, in-state tackle. He feels like a player that a lot of people have projected to the Badgers already. I like the movement skills. I like the size, I like the frame. Probably more of a right tackle type. I think he's a little more in that mold than like a Kevin Haywood than when he came in, although Haywood's a freak. But definitely a player to track. Meier coming in. Tayshon Bardo is an interesting one. What have we talked about with this recruiting class in 26? What are some of the big needs? What do they have to do really well with this class? I think it's a couple. I think every year it's quarterback, which we're going to talk about quarterback in a second. But then you got to land a couple running backs. You got to land a couple receivers in this cycle because they haven't done it recently. The last 2 receiver classes, they've landed 2 total receivers. That's not enough, not nearly enough. And then at running back, they didn't get one last year. So I think you were fine with that because you knew what you had coming back. You knew you had young running backs that could be on this roster for a couple years. But this year, you got to get a couple running backs, and I think you got to land a couple receivers. So Tayshon Bardo is really interesting to me out of Indiana, 6 foot, 185 pounds, high 3-star guy. Has a 35-inch vertical reported, 4.49 40. So good speed. It's not burner speed. When you watch him on film, it takes a little bit to get up to full speed. There's some long strides with Bardo, but good size, solid frame, really good after the catch, quick acceleration, gets his foot north and south. That's something a lot of coaches talk about with Yak. Sometimes it's not about how much you can make people miss in the open field. It's about how quickly do you just get north and south, catch the ball, turn up field, and make something happen. He shows a lot of that on film. Bardo does. I like the hands. He extends a lot of catches to get catch radius to get outside his frame to catch the ball. And then he shows a lot of route combinations. When you watch high school film, and again, I'm an amateur high school film watcher. I would never purport to be anything other than that. But when you watch him on film, you see the entire route tree, which I think is really interesting. You see go routes, you see whip routes, you see slant routes, you see a deep dig. A lot of high school receivers, especially in Indiana. If you remember back to Vinny Anthony's high school film was basically just go routes. A little bit more than that. There's special team stuff on his film too. Bardo showcases kind of the whole package. Good hands, good size, good speed, good explosive ability. Some really nice double moves on his film where he feels like a more mature receiver with a good frame and speed. Probably a guy who could play early. I like Bardo a lot. Tayshon Bardo's a guy that I would really track at the receiver spot. We had a comment in here from Hooger, said Bardo's going to be tough with the Indiana offer since he's from there, but he is a stud. Capitals. Love his ability after catch. Yeah, that's one of the first things I noticed too, Hoogs. After the catch, it's quick, north and south, get acceleration, make people miss. I think he's a bit of a problem. I really, really like him on this. Let's talk about a quarterback the Badgers recently got involved in too. I mentioned this. This might be my favorite quarterback of the 26 class, Travis Burgess, 6'5", 6'4". Let me know if you guys have watched film on Burgess. 200 pounds, high 3-star quarterback coming out of Loganville, Georgia. Offers from Auburn, Virginia Tech, Duke, a couple other ones in there. Not a huge offer list, but I'm curious if that one picks up. We've seen that with a couple quarterbacks in this cycle that the Badgers get in on, and then that offer list picks up. But the Badgers have offered him. He said he's going to be coming. He said he's going to be interested in Wisconsin. Travis Burgess, what do we like about him? You watch him on film, it is just a long, lean athlete. Really, really good frame. He's going to add 20 or 30 pounds. He's going to get bigger, but mobility, the ability to stand in the pocket, see the field, deliver the throw, and then when he tucks it and runs, just long strider, eats up space, erases angles. This is the type of guy that drives defensive coordinators nuts. A little longer, leaner frame than a Mabry Mettoyer. Good arm. I don't know if it's an elite arm. Who's blowing up my phone, man? I don't know if it's an elite arm, but it's definitely a good enough arm. And he sees the field. You watch him on film. He's anticipating throws. He's throwing with timing at the high school level. Again, high school quarterbacks, who knows? But the skill set is here. The arm is here. The size is here. The mobility is here. I like a ton of what we see on this film. And it's just a higher tier of quarterback than what Longo was going after, a higher tier of physical skills than what Longo was going after, maybe outside of the Evers, which didn't work. But you look at a Jaron Mock, you look at the Teddy Gerard, you look at the Locks. This is a different style, a higher upside quarterback. I like him a lot. And I don't know if Hopkins is my favorite, if Falzone's my favorite. I think he might be my favorite. I think Travis Burgess might be my favorite. I think you combine some of what you get with the high upside with some of what you see with Hopkins on film, where he's scanning the field, he's throwing with anticipation, has enough arm. I like it a lot. I would be very happy if Travis Burgess ends up being the quarterback for the Badgers. Bo says, never mention Longo's name again. Longo Voldemort. I love it. Dennis Reynolds says, Ryan's buddies are looking to get ripped tonight. Oh, no, with the phone. No, that's almost certainly not that. My buddies are too old. My buddies are too old to be doing that. Let's keep going here. Any other questions, thoughts on James White? I'm looking in here. Certainly played for the Patriots. And some comments too about Mark F. I trust Bielema. Bielema makes good hires. It's not that I don't think James White wouldn't be a good hire, because I think he would. I think James White is going to be successful at whatever the hell James White wants to be successful at. I think that he's done that his entire career. I just think for this locker room and for what this team is and where they're at, they all need to be super unified on the same page going forward. And I don't know if that's the case when you have a player who potentially could look back at what has worked before. And certainly he wouldn't upset the apple cart, but there just might be some, I don't know. I just don't think it would be the best move. All right, let's keep going here. Hoogs. Yeah, Rajiv did blow up my phone a little bit. Okay, let's pause there, come back, because we got to talk about Penn State. We got to talk about the season wrapping up, keys to the game, who's going to be there, why this game is such a big deal, and the one thing that might concern you if you're a Badgers fan coming into this Penn State game to wrap up the regular season. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for friends of the show over at Nissan. Listen, Nissan's incredible. And right now, Nissan is all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro-4X, numbers are on an MVP level with the ability to up to 8,500 pounds. That's like Travis Frederick. It can literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go, powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, which is Greg Gard's 8-man rotation, the Armada Pro-4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails, rolling up to the arena, heading up to a Locked On Badgers meetup, the Armada Pro-4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro-4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Okay, let's finish this off. Let's talk Penn State, and then any other comments you guys have. There's a ton going on, right? Obviously, junior day, recruiting visits, spring practice coming up. We talked a little bit about James White heading to Illinois. Today's episode unofficially brought to you by Lance Kendricks, which if you're watching on YouTube is back there on the TV. And then let's talk a little Penn State. Let's talk a little bit about this game. Wisconsin coming in at a 12.5-point favorite. 12 o'clock game on Saturday on Peacock. Penn State is 15-15. 5-14 in the Big Ten. Ugh. They've lost 9 of their last 11. However, be careful because their last game, Penn State's last game, again, they've lost 9 of their last 11, but their last game was a 4-point loss to Maryland that they put the scares in them. So be careful. Player you got to worry about a little bit is Ace Baldwin Jr. Ace Baldwin Jr. is the engine of their team, averages about 14 per game, 7 assists, a well-built lefty, get in the paint, can score at the rim, can score mid-range. Not a great shooter, but definitely somebody that you got to be concerned about. If Klesmit was playing, like that's probably the Klesmit guard. I'm not fully sure if he's going to be back. Wisconsin has expressed hope that Max Klesmit can be back for senior day, which would be awesome. That'd be awesome for him. He definitely deserves it. He earns it. He's got to be 100% because, again, I would not play Max Klesmit unless he is ready to go and you don't risk re-injuring him because this game is not that important. I know you want to get back to that momentum. You want to get back to that gel. You want to get back to that rotation that was working really well heading into March, but it's not worth it if Max isn't. If I'm telling you, you got to get him healthy. But I would love to see him play in this. Penn State's not a great shooting team. If you look at what they do well and what they don't do well, shooting is not it. They are poor in transition defensively. They're poor in the post defensively. So this is a game where I would love to see Stephen Crowell play better. I know I think Rajiv and I disagreed a little bit in the last game. I didn't think last game was a very good Stephen Crowell game against Minnesota. I thought he let Minnesota off the hook. Minnesota was guarding him with smaller defenders, smaller post defenders. And too often, Stephen Crowell kicked it out for a mid-ish three-point shot when he wasn't doubled. If you're not doubled against Minnesota as a postman, as a post player, Stephen Crowell, you just got to back down and take the shot. You got to punish them until they double you. And then you pass it out and you get better looks. I think this is a game where Stephen Crowell has to play well, play aggressive. I would like to see that. Tanjay's been in a bit of a slump. It would be nice to see him kind of break out of that as well. And then John Blackwell just maintain that energy that you've had. Come out with that same level of intensity you did against Minnesota, and I think they'll take care of this game. You just can't have a letdown. And there's no reason you should have a letdown on senior night with this season, with everything you've done. A letdown would be inexcusable against this Penn State team because you're far better than they are. You're playing at home. It's a senior night. You got to take care of business. I think it starts with Stephen Crowell. If Max Klesmit gets back, great. If he doesn't get back, there's a couple players who could use a nice game. Kamari McGee could use a nice game. He could use a couple shots to go in. I think Tanjay and Blackwell both playing well would be important. And then just Carter Gilmore played great last game. Incredible defensively. He hasn't hit a shot. It doesn't feel like he's hit a three in a couple games, or if it is, it feels like that percentage has dipped a little bit too. It would be nice to see him bang a couple threes and just kind of get back into that rhythm. Because what happens if you stop hitting shots when you have a history of not hitting shots? Teams stop closing out on you. You want to continue to see him hit shots to force defenses into a bind when he's out there. Bo Dragan says Penn State is a zero threat level. I'm telling you, they almost beat Maryland. They should be a zero threat level, but that's not how sports work. We all know that. YouTube says, I hate senior day. Almost a guaranteed L. I hope not, man. I hope not. What other comments do we have in here? AJ says they have to win for a double bye. So Illinois plays Purdue tonight. I think if Purdue wins, they have the tiebreaker. This tiebreaker thing is confusing. Like I know Rajiv put some stuff in the Discord about it. Someone else posted like a book about it, which was incredible. I was going through that. I don't fully know if Wisconsin wins, if they have the bye or not, if Purdue also wins the double bye. I hope so. They have a bye, but obviously we're fighting for the double bye there. Mark F, yeah, Gilmore and McGee have cooled off. And McGee has dominated more of that conversation because I think it's been more dramatic because he doesn't do as much on the other things that Gilmore's been able to do. Gilmore's still been scoring inside. Gilmore's been getting fouled. But yeah, Gilmore hasn't he needs to hit a couple threes too to keep this spacing. So I think it would be nice to see him do that. Bo says if they have all tired legs, let Freitag, Janicki take the minutes. Janicki will play a lot. You're probably not going to, again, Freitag, I think the book has been kind of written on that this year. You're probably not going to see some of that. And listen, we saw when Greg Gard needed to go down a tier on his bench, when he needed to bring someone in, it wasn't Daniel Freitag, right? Like he brought in Hunter. He brought in Cameron Hunter for a couple minutes against Minnesota. And then Minnesota promptly went on a 6-0 run, which I don't think was on Hunter, but it wasn't a great look, right? So I don't think Hunter is necessarily in that position either. And Freitag is below him in the depth chart in the pecking order. So I don't think you're going to see Daniel Freitag, but big game for the Badgers. Big, important moment. You have to win this game. Hopefully get that double bye, get healthy, get some momentum. And as a bonus, if you can get McGee going a little bit, Tanjay and Blackwell kind of back to that free-flowing offense. Aggressive Crowell. You got to punish them when you get the opportunity. Crowell's a player who sometimes I think needs to see it going early. And if it does, he's kind of locked in for the rest of the game. And if he struggles a little early, I don't know if he ever gets back engaged. So I would like to see him to get going early as well. We're going to wrap it up there. Again, a big game tomorrow on Wisconsin. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in. We will talk to you later when you're done here. Go check out Locked On Big Ten. All the biggest stories on the Big Ten channel over there. Check them out, and we will absolutely be with you after the Penn State game tomorrow for the reaction show. Hopefully it's a good one on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.